Hello, everyone. Welcome to Todd Talks. I am joined with James Haeck, our lead writer at D&D Beyond. He's also the co-author of many a official D&D book and lots of DM's Guild products as well. And today we are talking to you about that most sought after sort of subclass, a genre that we call the Gish, that fighter that is also a wizard, that sword and sorcery. Everyone wants it. Everyone tries for it. And the Eldritch Knight is certainly one of those subclasses that tries for it quite hard. What space do you feel, James, that the Eldritch Knight fits? Because we have many versions of this. If you are interested in Gish characters, you are probably drawn to the Eldritch Knight. Which tends to be more sword, a little less sorcery. But then there's the Blade Singer, which is a lot of wizardry, and I also have a sword. Right. And then we've got like the Hexblade Warlock as well. Right. So where does this fit in?
There are truly a lot of options for someone who wants to play someone who melds magic and melee. The Eldritch Knight is, and they all kind of exist on a spectrum of how swordy are you, how magic-y are you. And the Eldritch Knight falls very heavily on the sword side of the spectrum. No matter what happens, you are still very much a fighter first and a caster second.
Absolutely.
Just the other week, we were talking about the Arcane Trickster Rogue, Todd. And these two subclasses are kind of birds of a feather in many ways. They mirror each other quite nicely. So you get all of your normal fighter stuff, your incredible athleticism, your 4 attacks over the course of your 20 levels. And built onto that is a very sort of gentle spellcasting curve. You have fewer spells known and fewer spell slots than even a paladin or a ranger does, but that's because they're not there to be a primary element of your class. They're there to support the fighter stuff you can already do. So that's why there are certain limitations baked into it.
Very much supplemental to what your skills already are. Exactly like the Arcane Trickster, almost a mirror in many ways of that type.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite side of the same coin that the Blade Singer exists on. Right. Whereas the Blade Singer is very much a wizard who gets some things they can do with their sword. I think the College of Swords Bard from Xanathar's Guide is that way too. Those two are very much full spellcasters who get a little bit of fun sword stuff that they can do when they're not casting. The Eldritch Knight is very much someone who fights a lot and then occasionally has these big explosive moments where a spell is cast. I think we can dive kind of right into their features, their class features in particular, because that'll help explain what I'm talking about here.
Well, it's also good to frame that the Eldritch Knight has some of those same restrictions that you would see from, the Arcane Trickster Rogue. So like the Eldritch Knight, their magical techniques are very specifically, coming kind of from that wizard spell list as well. They're fighters that have learned a little bit of wizardy magic but consequentially, because these spells are largely to supplement their combat, they're very much focused on only 2 schools of magic. That's abjuration and evocation. And that makes a lot of sense.
Evocation, the offense school, the big explosive blasty school, and abjuration, the defensive one, the one all about creating wards and protecting against status effects, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And they do get a couple of wild card spells as they level up, starting at the very beginning and sort of slowly trickling in throughout their entire career that they can use from any spell school as long as it's on the wizard spell list. So you're not totally locked down. You can still have a lot of flexibility in character build. It's just not the core of your class.
And there are some cantrips that came about at a later time to again supplement this subclass as well as others. Those would be Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade, both of which you have to take an attack action with them though, I believe, and they're cantrips, so you can use them as often as you'd like.
I would hesitate to play an Eldritch Knight if I don't have access to those cantrips from Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Right, they were published in Sword Coast because they were meant to kind of live alongside the Blade Singer, which appeared there too. But they are a huge boon to the Eldritch Knight, who draws from the wizard spell list already.
Now, there is somewhat of a caveat there, isn't there, when it comes to casting either of those spells? If you have multiple attacks, does that not take your entire action?
Yeah, so these cantrips, Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade, let me get the text in front of me here. They are cantrips with a casting time of 1 action. So right, that's kind of the action economy game you have to play with the Eldritch Knight, because you use your action to actually cast the cantrip, but then the cantrip lets you make a melee weapon attack. It doesn't get all of the bonuses of your extra attack features, which for fighters is quite potent. It gets you up to 4 at the very high levels.
Yeah.
But as long as you're like when you're still in those early levels before you get extra attack, 3rd and 4th, when you're starting your Eldritch Knight career, they are very powerful buffs to your abilities.
Now, because of this, and because it's on my mind, I'm not entirely unwilling to sacrifice an action to, well, that gets rid of all of your attacks. So yeah, you only get the 1 attack.
And here's the thing. When you are a slightly higher level Eldritch Knight, there are some things you can do to mitigate that pain point. And I think as we get into their class features, we can talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. And that starts with spellcasting at level 3. You know, you don't really know what type of fighter you are until level 3, and then it gets very well defined. and obviously that starts with spellcasting. So let's break it down.
The spellcasting starts out fairly limited. 2 cantrips from any spell school, as long as they're on the wizard spell list, and a somewhat paltry 3 first level wizard spells from Abjuration Evocation, and there's 1 wildcard spell you can choose from any spell school as well. And even at 3rd level, you've only got 2 spell slots. So think about this holistically in the context of your adventuring day. You're not being penalized having so few spell slots. These are meant to be big explosive moments that enhance your fighter abilities.
And obviously, big one, shield.
Right.
And you even use it as an example in the player's handbook. In the actual subclass itself, you're probably going to want shield. You've got armor, you've got a shield maybe, but then you do another shield.
Yeah, shield is an interesting one because it only gives you a small benefit time-wise, right? +5 to AC is nothing to sneeze at. It's huge. It can turn, if you're a fighter in full plate with a shield, you've got 20 AC. The difference between 20 and 25 AC, especially at lower levels, is absolutely mind-boggling. Shield it's basically the don't get hit spell unless you've been critical. And
certainly it is a reaction.
Yeah, so and it only lasts for 1 turn. So if you really want to stretch out the spell slots, you may find it to be a big expenditure.
However, that is quite nice. To be able to get that for a full turn is nice. Not that it's only a reaction to 1 single attack. This does mean, like, if you're fighting a monster that has multiple attacks, if you're fighting a horde of monsters, this is giving you a minute to breathe, really, and get back into that fight.
And the thing about all of these kind of early low-level evocation and abjuration spells available to the Eldritch Knight is that usually when you have so few spell slots, you want to prioritize ones that have long durations, involve concentration, that sort of thing. And there just aren't a lot of those available to you at the very beginning. No. Most of them are either, 1-turn defensive spells like Shield, or they're 1-turn offensive spells like Thunderwave or Chromatic Orb, Burning Hands. And they're big bursts of damage, but they're not in that sort of long game thing that you might want to do if you're, say, a Warlock with 1 spell slot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and these are, Thunderwave, good example of a spell that is very handy. Again, you've got monsters on all sides. You knock that, you hit multiple opponents. You're not necessarily giving up the damage you would be doing by doing multiple attacks. You've made that choice, and you're getting a knockback effect that maybe will buy you some time. So it's all very blasty blast.
Yes, indeed. And if you want to supplement that, it's important not to forget those wild card any school spell slots, like the
and when do we get those?
You get one right from the very beginning at 3rd level, and you get them very spaced out. Another at 8th, another at 14th, another at 20th, your capstone level. So you have to be very judicious about these spells, because once you learn them. It's not like a wizard with their spell book where you can keep adding spells and changing them day by day. You have memorized these spells like a bard might, so you don't get to change them, except you can swap out one every time you level up. So you're not completely set in stone, but you should be making every spell choice with some thought put into it.
And I like that because that helps me tell a story about my Eldritch Knight. Much in the way, like, wizards are fun for me because you have that hungry desire for scrolls, right? Like I love it when DMs play into that. Like, you find a scroll, you learn it, like it costs you money and time. And these things have like more value than treasure. The idea of knowledge is treasure for wizards is so fun, and it's an aspect I love to play into. With this Eldritch Knight, you are telling a story with every choice you make because it is so fundamentally important. One of these wild card spells that could be from any list in the wizards section, what would you choose? Because there's some good choices here.
It's a hard choice because it's very character dependent, I feel, right? Just like you were saying, you're kind of telling a story about all the spells you pick. And a lot of that story is kind of already chosen for you because of those abjuration, evocation ones. So these wild cards, in my opinion, should be things that flesh out your character beyond their sort of hunger for combat. They should be things that help you in a more social way. I mean, charm person maybe, or that help you out in a more exploration-based way. I think taking disguise self could be interesting.
Absolutely.
Doing, or even just things like detect magic. Maybe even as a fighter, you are kind of hungry for that knowledge about magic. Take a spell that lets you find it wherever it is. Or heck, find familiar. Find familiar is always a fun spell for a melee character to take. It's a little better for arcane tricksters who love to get advantage every turn.
Yeah.
But if you've got a hawk companion who you summon from the ether every day, who flies around your enemies' heads to distract them while you move in and cleave them in twain with your greatsword, that just feels good.
Yeah, and then we have again, Tasha's hideous laughter. I mean, you've got I like the idea of an Eldritch Knight that is using Tensor's floating disc. So you're kind of like Boba Fett. You're a bounty hunter.
Oh yeah.
You get your prey and you put them in shackles, and then you just have them on the Tensor's floating disc as you walk into town. It's kind of an evocative thing, especially if you're. And this is another one of those subclasses that's quite good if you're by yourself. Like the fighter has always been a good solo character if you're in a solo game, but this, you got a little bit of extra to work with here.
Yeah, just like we talked about with Arcane Trickster the other week, the level of versatility that this class provides is so high, it makes it a great choice for solo campaigns. I am currently tickled by the idea of an Eldritch Knight fighter investing one of their spell slots into Unseen Servant, just so that they have, someone to polish their armor, to carry their loot around a little bit.
Right. You're not high level enough to have accumulated followers or even a squire. So you have this invisible squire, and it does have that. It's a very charming image.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You see this shield being polished by this invisible creature. And I imagine eventually, if you're like kind of a lonely Eldritch Knight, you start talking to it. Right.
Oh, man. But you can see the character coming out like this, Todd. We talked about Arcane Trickster being very much sort of a fantasy novel protagonist.
Yeah.
Because of how versatile they are. And I think that's exactly the idea that lends itself to this subclass too. The idea of someone who travels alone and ends up talking to their unseen servant is really quite charming.
Yeah, it reminds me of Tony Stark as Iron Man talking to the mechanical arms in his shop.
Right.
And putting dunce caps on them, and like that kind of thing. Having that weird relationship would be very fun with an Unseen Servant. And I feel like the fighter would be more prone to that kind of thing than, say, a wizard who can literally eventually, in some Unearthed Arcana, manifest, a talking spell book.
Right.
So...
you mentioned earlier scrolls, and scrolls are always good for wizards because they can copy them into their spell books, learn them permanently. But I think people forget just how potent scrolls can be for these 1/3 caster classes like Eldritch Knight and Arcane Trickster, because that limitation of spell schools that prevent you from learning spells doesn't apply to being able to cast them off of scrolls. This may feel like a bit of a technicality, but it really is kind of tapping into that. Well, let's just try something off the cuff and see how it works. It plays into that fast and loose feel that the Eldritch Knight has. So if you find in the loot from a dungeon a spell scroll of like Fireball, and you're a 5th level Eldritch Knight who can't even cast 2nd level spells yet, you use that scroll and you put your mind to it. You have to make an intelligence check in order to use a scroll that's higher level than you can normally use. But just imagine the burst of power that comes out of you, like, whoa, someday I'll be able to do that. And your spell slots are so limited that having that extra little bit of oomph from a scroll that doesn't burn spell slots is very useful to this kind of character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then that becomes fun. Like that becomes part of your arsenal.
Yeah,
and it becomes the the arrows in your quiver.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You're just carrying around this supplemental gear, and it does have a little bit of a Witcher feel where you got some things on you. You got some tricks. Like, oh, I need a barter for this scroll or this healing potion. And that becomes, I love that journey. Like, this is, again, I have found the older I get as a player of D&D and tabletop, the more I like limitations on what I can do. I don't like being the most powerful. I like someone that has to, like, I gotta haggle for some scrolls.
You want to be kind of scrappy.
I gotta like it grounds things in realism, and that's what I like about half casters.
Yeah. I think the best advice I can give to DMs, I know this is kind of usually a player focused show because we're talking about classes, but if there are any DMs listening to this, I think that if you are playing, if you're running a group with an Eldritch Knight in it, be sure that you're including spell scrolls in your loot. Make sure they're of the wizard spell list so they can use them. And also make sure that your Eldritch Knight player knows that they can use it, because it does feel kind of like it takes a moment of understanding to realize, oh, this isn't just wizard loot. This is for me too.
I wouldn't say no to a DM's guide for individual play subclasses.
It's one of the hardest things.
DM notes that the players don't see, but like ways you can help an Eldritch Knight, right?
Yeah.
Like I would love a book of that kind of stuff.
It's the hardest part of DMing, and people always talk about, how do you write an adventure? How do you balance things? And those are all important, of course. But the most important thing you can do as a home DM is make sure you understand what your players are capable of and what they want to do, and tailor your adventures to their capabilities. Every DM has to decide how much they want to do that.
But God, when you have a DM that does that for you, it for a player, it just immerses you so deeply into that world.
Yeah.
Go
too far and it can feel like, a video game where the world is kind of bending to who you are. But if you can strike that balance, it's unbelievable.
I was reminded, and I have failed as a DM, I feel like in the last few years, when it came to Wizards and Scrolls, the importance of finding those spells instead of like basically I've had a wizard that just gets their spells. There's some cleric, they took a dip into cleric, and so there's some reasons why they're capable of doing that sort of. But as a wizard, I would want that experience. As an Eldritch Knight, I would want that experience. And one of my favorite reminders of that wizard journey is Kayla Widowgast finds all those scrolls, and they need to leave this room completely untouched. And he gets into it with Ford.
Yeah.
Because Ford's like, we have to leave this room exactly as is. And Caleb can't handle it because there's all of these magic scrolls. And it becomes this moment of this beautiful moment of tension between these characters who are learning about each other. And that's a great thing to use as a DM. Not against your players, but to create that friction of, with this Eldritch Knight. This Eldritch Knight's gonna want scrolls. This Eldritch Knight's gonna want like potions. It's gonna want to be able to be a better warrior. And the wizard may have many different views on that. So
yes.
Now we've talked a lot about kind of a lot of the role playing aspects and how to DM for Eldritch Knight. Big part of it is weapon bond. You want to walk me through, because let's not forget about the sword.
Right. I spent all this time talking about how the fighter remains a fighter, just with a few extra magic tricks up their sleeve.
Right.
So in addition to getting a handful of wizard spells at 3rd level, you also get a feature called Weapon Bond that lets you perform a magical ritual that kind of bonds your favored weapon to your very soul. And so once you have a weapon bonded to yourself, you can't be disarmed of it unless you are yourself incapacitated. And as long as you are on the same plane of existence as that weapon, anywhere in the world, even on a different world, right? If you're playing an Eberron game and somehow your weapon has been kicked to the Forgotten Realms, you are still on the material plane. You can still summon that weapon to you.
I have a lot of players that forget this. If you are, like if you're in Eberron, if you're on Kryn, if you're on Faerun, it's still the prime material plane.
Yep. Nevertheless, on material plane, just a different world.
If you're in Ravenloft, no.
Yeah, all bets are off in Ravenloft.
Yeah. You're in a different place.
Yeah, but you can use a bonus action to conjure that weapon directly into your hand. And this is very interesting. This is good for roleplay stuff, right? You can never truly be disarmed, but it can also be good for a throwing weapon, for instance, right? You throw it as an action, and your javelin may be lodged in the chest of an ODU 50 feet away from you, but you just right back into your hand.
It is lovely. It does, burn one of your bonus actions, certainly. But I am, for whatever reason, grew up with a video game that had a throwing axe, and I am in love with throwing axes now that return to you.
Yeah, and anyone who's played the most recent God of War game can.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a bit of an homage, also an homage, obviously, to Mjolnir. This is a very Thor ability, right?
Anyone who's been playing Hades from Supergiant lately can feel the power of calling a spear right back into your hand.
Fantastic game company, fantastic game. The game I'm talking about is Times of Lore. If you really want to date how old I am, I found a magical axe that returned to me, and that was just pure joy.
Yeah.
So this is very fun for that kind of evocative feel. It's very Thor. In fact, a lot of this is very Thor on some level. So that's a pretty basic 3rd level ability, but the fighter gets a lot.
The fighter gets a lot, right? Keep in mind that you are still a fighter. You get more ability score increases than any other class. As a fighter, you want to be skilled in a lot of ability scores. You want Constitution, so you have health. You want to choose either strength or dexterity, depending on what kind of weaponry you use. And because you're an Eldritch Knight, you also want intelligence, because it fuels your spellcasting. But fortunately, as a fighter, you kind of have the resources to do it all, because you've got a lot more stat points than anyone else.
You do, or you have a lot more feats, and that's what's fun. This is why I feel like fighter is the most popular class as far as I've seen in metrics myself. Number one, it's easy to understand. I think there's a lovely amount of variety to the fighter. It's
incredibly versatile in terms of story. Yeah.
And the fact that you can get that many feats. So I wouldn't necessarily go Warcaster with this because you don't have a lot of concentration spells necessarily that you're going to be relying on until later if you want to dip into like Shadow Blade. But what would you recommend?
As far as feats go, I know we're right in the middle of the class features, but we'll get back to that. A feat is a 4th level class feature.
Yeah.
As far as feats go, there are a number that can be interesting to use. I think Warcaster can be useful because of its ability to give you spells as opportunity attacks, right? Being able to cast a magic missile as a foe flees to unerringly hit them is quite tempting. And you do eventually get a couple of concentration spells. I can see someone using their wildcard spell slot to gain haste, for instance, putting haste on yourself as a fighter. Very fun.
Right. But very dangerous. So you definitely want that Warcaster because you'll have a full round of just sitting there.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary.
But there are a number of other quite useful feats that you can take as well. Generally ones that are typical to the fighter. Great Weapon Master is one that is always useful.
Yeah.
Polearm Master, another one.
Yeah, the
standard kind of weapon hitty feats, right?
Yeah, and if you're looking for that, Eldritch Knight that's a little bit of extra magic, always go into, Magical Adept pick up some spells that you maybe wouldn't get that will help supplement your fighting. Spell Sniper might be fun.
Could be fun.
Remove some issues with cover if your DM is very big on cover, as well as giving you that kind of length of a shot that you may not be prepared for. You may not be, a bow and arrow type fighter, right? But if you knock out a firebolt, but I do like Warcaster for that reaction to cast a spell, because if you're like knocking down something like Lightning Lure, you want to keep that battle to you. It's a very good spell to lock somebody down.
Yes, indeed. Just like we suggested for Arcane Trickster, Ritual Caster is a surprisingly good spell because Eldritch Knights, as sort of only spellcasting dabblers, do not have the ability to cast rituals in the way that wizards and clerics do. So being able to... there are kind of two big benefits to this. One of them is, of course, you can cast rituals which do not burn your precious spell slots, which is always good. But the other thing is it gives you a ritual casting spell book. So just like a wizard might, you can now copy specific spells, but you can copy spells into a book that you can take with you wherever you go. And that makes things like identify, detect magic, find familiar very, very useful to you.
And I adore it again because you're a dabbler, and this kind of like pushes you more into that area of being a dabbler and being able to be by yourself. I like some other flavor things I would do with an Eldritch Knight. I've always wanted to play an Eldritch Knight that has his spells written on the inside of his shield. Kind of like Cliff Notes, like cheat sheets.
Like he's cheating during the test.
Because he's not going to approach it, like a regular wizard. He's just like scratching it on the inside of his shield, like a Viking,
That's delightful.
Yeah. So there's lots of fun opportunities with the Eldritch Knight that are evocative now. But speaking of how things get better, we've got War Magic. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, this is one I really want to talk about in the context of feats as well. War Magic is a very interesting feature that lets you use your action to cast a cantrip and then make a weapon attack. It's a bonus action. So by the time you get this, you've got the extra attack feature. Normally, you'll be making 2 attacks as your action. This spell kind of lets you do the same thing and trade out one of your weapon attacks for a casting of a cantrip. And when you use a cantrip like Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade that gives you an attack anyway, this is where things start to get really fun because you're using your action to cast, gets you a free attack, you get a special thing on top of it, and then you can just use your bonus action to make another attack anyway. So you've lost nothing really, unless you planned on using your bonus action to like Misty Step or something like that.
Right.
It does come at a bit of a cost for 2-weapon fighters, I think. If you're doing that, I would probably ask your DM to do a little bit of house ruling there. But
you arguing that with Green Flame Blade, I mean, like these cantrips and Booming Blade are going up as you level up as an Eldritch Knight, so you are doing extra damage.
Yeah.
So that's nice, and then you get the extra attack.
Yeah.
Right, you're losing that bonus action. I think you're right. I think this is where it becomes kind of important to have Warcaster if you want to get like a little bit of a reaction attack. I would take feats that give me a reaction type attack that I can make.
As soon as I saw this feature, the first thing I thought of was the much maligned True Strike cantrip, the one that gives you advantage on the next attack you make. Because I'm always trying to think of a way to make that cantrip good
work.
Right. I remember when I first started playing D&D, it was in 3rd edition, and True Strike was a wild cantrip. It gave you plus 20 to your next attack roll, so it really was a true strike. And back then there were spell slots for cantrips, which I think are welcomely gone from the game these days. But being able, if you're able to make use of True Strike on the exact same turn, cast it, and then immediately gain advantage on the next attack you make, especially if you've got a feat like Great Weapon Master where you really want to hit to deal that extra damage, can be useful. But man, every time I think of it, I'm just like, man, why am I not just making another attack anyway? Why am I not just attacking? It's effectively mathematically the same as making one attack with advantage, except there's a chance I hit both times.
Then I'm looking at, there's Unearthed Arcana's Poisoner feat, right? Like, so maybe I would do something like that where I've poisoned my weapon ahead of time. I need to make sure I make this hit. So I'm going to poison my greatsword.
Mm-hmm.
I've got greater weapon master, so I want to make sure I hit. So I do true strike. I hit with 2d6 plus 10.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I've got elven accuracy, so I have a high chance at a crit.
Right.
If it fails its constitution saving throw on the poison, it takes another 2d8.
Now, the trick with Elven Accuracy is that it's only for ranged and finesse weapons. So
that's true. That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
But,
okay.
But, if you've got Sharpshooter, then it's a different story, right? It starts working again.
In fact, we just had a conversation about this, about how I've been trying to, manipulate the Battlemaster combo with the rogue mastermind. There's a implied synergy that we'll probably do an article and a video about later, I think.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that one.
Yeah, so you're totally right. But if you had if you're a very odd Eldritch Knight and you happen to have the crossbow.
Yeah.
Hey,
cool crossbow. Idea.
Yeah. And you're just at range and you're doing this kind of John Wick thing.
I mean, imagine flavoring your cantrips, your firebolts is firing from your crossbow anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, I have thought a lot. Yeah. So it could be fun. It's not game breaking. It's not overly powerful by any means.
Yeah, a lot of room for experimentation here.
So this brings us to Eldritch Strike.
Yes, this one is one of my particular favorites of the Eldritch Knight. You learn to make your weapon strikes undercut a creature's resistances to your spells. So when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, that creature has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes against a spell you cast before the end of your next turn. So this is not a kind of a one-turn damage spike. It's setting you up for future success. I can imagine a turn where you use War Magic to cast something like Shocking Grasp, and then you immediately get your attack. And as soon as you hit with that attack, suddenly they are it kind of primed for you to hit them with something really big, like a hold person or a phantasmal force or something like that.
Shocking Grasp is such a great spell for this.
Yes,
because you're probably fighting people in armor.
Yeah, you're fighting people in armor. You're in the fray of it anyway. You've got your greatsword in both hands, right? You just kind of lower your hand and thrust one right at their chest. It's a perfect right in the middle of its spell. This is something I think kind of got glossed over in our War Magic conversation, but it does kind of balance out the fact that you are sacrificing extra attacks in order to cast as an action, because your cantrips scale in damage with level.
Yeah.
So, Shocking Grasp may only start as 1d8 lightning damage, but at 5th level, but by the time you've got War Magic, it's doing 2d8, and then beyond that, it's 3d8 and 4d8, so that the damage just keeps on piling up.
Yeah, and it's so evocative to be fighting another knight and you just reach out and you electrify them.
Yeah.
Is pretty nasty stuff. So, it's because, as Shocking Grasp is, hey, metal and electricity, they don't really go together too well.
Yeah. Shocking Grasp is a great spell for this subclass.
Yeah. And again, like you said, Green Flame Blade is going to keep going up. Booming Blade is going to keep going up. These are only going to get more powerful as time goes on.
Yeah, for sure. I think the amount of combinations you can think of with Eldritch Strike are limited only by your imagination and the spells you can cast. I highly encourage people to find fun spells that really want to hit, that they really want to nail that save or suck spell. So you just kind of think of what you're going to do next turn. It encourages you to think ahead a little bit, which I think is very fun and tactical. But moving on from that, there is Arcane Charge. This is a very interesting one. At 15th level, you gain the ability to teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that you can see when you use your action surge. You can teleport before or after you take that additional action. Very, very cool for following up either on fleeing foes who use funky reaction abilities to flee, right? There are some demon lords. You're 15th level, you might be fighting demon lords. There are some demon lords who can use legendary actions to teleport. And so you can keep hunting them down as they try and flee from you throughout the battle.
Yeah, that's sorry, I'm still entranced with Shocking Grasp, because I think about it, right. The more I'm yeah, you're doing that 1d8 lightning damage, but if they're wearing armor, you have advantage on attack roll. Oh, you have advantage on the attack roll if they're wearing armor. That's massive. And then you take away their reactions. We're not going to be seeing any fancy Battle Master stuff. We're not going to be seeing any of that casting shield up against you. Nope. So it's a good lockdown.
It's great. Yeah.
So so we've got, again, Arcane Charge. This is, again, a little bit of you're closing in.
Mm-hmm. So I think, right, we talked about fighters having access to a lot of feats. I think if you chose the Charger feat, if you were in my campaign, right, this feature called Arcane Charge, I would let this work with the Charger feat, because kind of the flavor of it isn't just that you kind of blip to another spot, it's that you're kind of moving at hyper speed for a second, move with like magic streaming all around you, right up to the next guy where you're prepared to attack. You
could really kind of play this off as kind of being a speedster, or kind of that Nightcrawler teleporter. If you really want to get nasty with this, you're looking at, okay, action surge, I get to teleport 30 feet. I need to close the ground. I got Misty Step. I got Charger. And like, that Eldritch Knight is on you.
You cannot escape.
You don't even know what happened. Like, it's 2 teleports in 1 turn, and they still get their action surge and all their fights. If you're playing something really interesting, like say Shatterkai Elf, and you use the bonus Misty Step there, you actually become resistant to all damage for 1 turn. When you look at the Eladrin, depending on your mood, but depending on your season, you may cause fire damage around you. You may cause fear. This can get really, really interesting in terms of bouncing around. I can see this elf who is just bouncing around all over the forest, causing you a nightmare now.
Yes. The final feature of the Eldritch Knight is an interesting one: improved war magic. Just like war magic that you got some 11 levels earlier, this also lets you make a weapon attack as a bonus action, but now it's even when you have used one of your spell slots to do so. And by this point, you have 4th level spells available. Well, you almost have 4th level spells.
Almost have 4th level spells, but you could be knocking out, a fireball.
Right, or like a haste, right? If you get haste, you're already getting another action you can use to attack. Yeah,
you're gambling big with this haste stuff you keep talking about. Haste is great. You get that extra attack. You get bonus to your AC and everything, and your movement. Obviously, now you're really all over the place. Arcane Charge, Action Surge. You're getting like 5 attacks.
Yeah.
What if you have Sentinel and they try to run away from you? You get 6 attacks. It's some nasty stuff. This is.
I'm thinking of 3rd level spells that you could really use that could really go off with this feature. If you really want to pop off with improved with this 18th level feature, I'm thinking of stuff like Fly, maybe.
I'm scared of a fighter that flies. Not as scared of them when their concentration breaks, but I'm gonna knock you out of the air.
Or the flip side of haste, slow. You slow a target and then you get a bunch of attacks against them.
Slow is one of my favorite spells. It's actually an invocation. There's an invocation for warlocks. I just like slow. It's nasty. It helps your whole party. It's you have a lower chance for dexterity saving throws. So you're setting up your wizard or your other blasters in your party to really shut down the enemy. And they're easier to hit.
Yeah. Slow is just an awesome.
Slow's great. Slow's amazing, and it's multiple targets.
And slow is it's a transmutation spell. It is not in sort of the approved list for Eldritch Knights, but again, you have wildcard spells available to you, and you can swap them out at every level. So if if many levels ago you decided to take, like, I'm trying to think of what a good spell would be, something like Shadowblade, for instance. You're like, I don't need Shadowblade anymore. I've got a magical greatsword, so let's trade it out. When I hit 18th level for slow. Imagine this, Todd. Vampiric Touch. You cast Vampiric Touch. It gives you an attack as part of the casting. You gain the ability to make another melee attack as an action. Wait a second. I might be gooning myself here. Does it specify a weapon attack? Specifies a weapon attack. Never mind.
Specifies a weapon attack, so you can't get 2 vampiric touches.
Game balance is screwing me here.
I think you can. Let's look at vampiric touch now. Like, there is something you can do, a subtle spell with vampiric touch, because technically, if you, and this is also a UA, Unearthed Arcana feat that you can take, you can be a meta magic adept, which will allow you to spend sorcery points to cast a spell as a bonus action, which I would kind of recommend with this to some degree, if you want to get some of this stuff a little bit early, but it'll run out pretty quick. But you can cast vampiric touch, and as you cast vampiric touch, you are allowed an attack with that spell.
And then you have
and then you get another one. Now, I don't think it's super optimal, but
wait, no, imagine that. Imagine, quickening a spell that lets you make an attack. So you cast that spell as a bonus action, and then you have your full attack action, which as an 18th level fighter, you've got like 4 attacks there, and you just bop. Wow, I'm healing for 12d6 damage all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, you can't. Vampiric touch, it does not work with the attack action, right? Am I correct? Like, you.
Let's look at the text here.
Let's look at the big specific wording for vampiric touch, because I think you are only allowed to do it once per turn.
It says, until the spell ends, you can make the attack again on each of your turns as an action. Yeah.
As a full action. Yeah.
I think
they wouldn't let you get away with that. Now, I have gone away with some other stuff.
Right.
Undead Warlock allows you to get half of any necrotic damage eventually that you deal in the terms of health. So you cast vampiric touch. Yeah. You get all the health of the damage you deal. Then you take meta magic, subtle spell. But still, getting 2 vampiric touches, like, in one round, it's pretty nasty stuff.
It's not bad. This is definitely something for DMs to be on the watch for, because a lot of these wizard spells are worded very specifically.
Yeah, to prevent this kind of cheese.
Right.
It is great to be able to, like, toss a fireball, teleport in there, Well, you can't teleport because of the bonus action, but tossing a fireball onto the battlefield and rushing in, charging like you said, and start hacking at people. You're making a statement.
It's super fun.
I feel like I do feel like the Eldritch Knight is I don't think it's overpowered remotely.
No.
I feel like a Blade Singer would probably take it to task pretty quick. Then again, Blade Singers, you're a wizard with a sword. Eventually, you run out of things to do with that sword.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of the big difference between classes like this, is that if you're facing a Blade Singer and Eldritch Knight in a weapons contest, then the Eldritch Knight will win hands down. And if you face the Eldritch Knight against the Blade Singer in a magic contest, well, the Blade Singer wins hands down.
Yeah.
And so the question becomes, who has the advantage in a no holds barred takedown? And there are so many variables that go into that: terrain, circumstances. In D&D, there are very few sort of no holds barred blank room takedowns. There's always some kind of alternate objective where you have to deal with situations that are not quite as simple as just take the other guy down to 0 hit points the fastest.
Well, and again, it depends on who you're targeting. Like, this is fun if you get Mage Slayer. Again, you got a little bit of magic, just enough to may cause another wizard some trouble. Like, especially this guy, you can close the distance.
Yeah.
If I want to send somebody to go take care of that spellcaster, I'll send a Eldritch Knight who maybe has got bumped up their resiliences with some feats as well. Then they're able, with their action surge, to teleport closer to the caster.
Yeah.
If they've got Misty Step as well, that's another 60 feet, and you're charging, you can definitely force a concentration save.
Yeah.
Real close. And that wizard is going to get nervous. If you got mobility, this is the guy you send in. This is the juggernaut. You're like, I know they got a mean wizard over there, so we're going to send in Bruno. And he's gonna take care of it.
Right.
He may not survive. But he's gonna knock his concentration. So it's a fun subclass. I feel like it's good for a grittier campaign. Like I would like I like the idea of a campaign where no one's like me, a full caster, right? Like you got the Arcane Trickster, you got the Eldritch Knight, you got these
Paladin, Ranger.
Yeah, like no one's like maybe magic isn't that massive necessarily, but it fits well into the Witcher universe as well, where there are maybe only a few sorcerers, a few wizards in the entire world, and there's 10. And then there are people like this who have picked up stuff. Maybe it's illegal for this fighter to even know magic or to wield magic. Think of the implications of that. Again, like the Arcane Trickster, you're not supposed to have this knowledge, maybe. So, it's a great DM tool to like look into. And if you're a wizard, obviously you can do the same thing, but like these edge cases of subclasses are quite ripe with role play.
Oh yeah. I'm still obsessed with the idea of a sort of buddy comedy between an Arcane Trickster and Eldritch Knight. This is very, very jock Eldritch Knight and kind of
and the Edgelord. I like Jock and the Edgelord. I like the idea of them. Very, very different views on magic and how they learn, and like trying to give each other tips or something like that, and being like totally wrong.
Yeah. But man, for some of the wild card spells to like slip between their various spell lists, like the Eldritch Knight picks up an enchantment spell that he saw the Arcane Trickster using.
Charming.
Oh, it's heartwarming.
Charming. Yeah, real briefly, like how do we see the Eldritch Knight working with maybe these two are like in cahoots. They're on the street. They're going on adventures. These are two they can I mean, you got a teleporter here, right? A little bit, so they can get around dungeons pretty well. He's good at being a tank. That shield action can really help with that kind of thing. So
the Arcane Trickster is great for dungeon exploration too, right? Because they've got that mage hand ledger domain allowing them to take care of traps from a distance. And you
both, when you have that, you both have an ability that eventually allows you to get advantage, cause disadvantage on your enemy to make a saving throw. Now, I think it would be more powerful if that disadvantage was on any saving throw made by a spellcaster.
So you can kind of team up a little bit.
Yeah, I think with Eldritch Strike, if it was disadvantage on their next saving throw versus another spellcaster, that would be very juicy for me.
Yeah,
I feel that wouldn't work with Arcane Trickster as much.
I think I can see the reason why it doesn't work that way, because it really wants you to kind of set up a benefit for yourself next turn. There's no way for a wizard to just kind of say, yeah, you have disadvantage on my next spell. So this is kind of the leg up over the wizard that the Eldritch Knight has.
Yeah, I mean, we do see the Shadow Sorcerer with the Hound of Ill Omen is attacking your an opponent of yours. They then get disadvantage actually on the spells that you cast on them, which is quite handy. I feel like not enough people really have given the Shadow Sorcerer its due. First off, Shadow Dog, always scary. And forcing everyone to have disadvantage as a full caster, pretty nasty stuff.
Pretty rad.
Yeah. So any other thoughts on the Eldritch Knight?
I think we've said all that really needs to be said. We could take a second to talk about good races for an Eldritch Knight.
Okay, yeah. I mean, obviously, Elf kind of feels right.
I think High Elf, just like we were talking about for Arcane Trickster, is a good pick, especially if you're playing a more dex-based fighter.
Right.
A human is always good, of course, because you get more feats. You can always kind of stack up your build with more feats when there's all sorts of stuff you want like this.
And again, if you look at the current UA, when you're looking at feats like some of these feats like meta magic require that you have the ability to be a spellcaster as a feature.
Yeah.
So this is the one fighter that can do that.
Yeah.
So this fighter can get meta magic. This fighter can get via feat be an Eldritch Adept and get Devil's Sight. Or Mask of Many Faces, and then you have a very interesting fighter.
Yeah. I think any race that makes a good fighter is a good one for this one. Half-Orc, Dragonborn, Mountain Dwarf, they're just all good. I think Rock Gnome is a really fun and surprising pick for an Eldritch Knight. They got that intelligence boost. They got their constitution boost. They have that sort of tinkery attitude to them already. The Eldritch Knight
don't
is so...
forget Goblin. Goblin. Like, you're tinier than people. You get that big bonus up to your class level for damage. And you're casting a spell.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking about getting advantage on that attack, it gets pretty nasty real quick.
The Zerial Tiefling from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, always good. I think Fire Genasi is a very interesting one. A lot of intelligence and constitution, some more fire spells. It feels very appropriate. There's just a lot of good options. It's hard to go wrong as long as you're thinking about a Hobgoblin. Bonuses to Constitution and Intelligence.
Hobgoblin is great for this.
Yeah.
Hobgoblin is fantastic. Now, the tinier races, like if you're considered small, you can't use a greater weapon. Yes. Am I correct?
That's correct. You can't use weapons with the heavy property, which is most of the big weapons.
Is it that you cannot, or that you have disadvantage?
I think it's can't, but it's fair that I don't know for sure. Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that.
Let me pop open my player's handbook real quick. And
sorry, folks. I always like to throw in a few random questions.
Todd likes to test my knowledge every now and then.
I'm terrified that I remember all this stuff.
Okay, it's not can't use, it's disadvantage. Creatures that are small or tiny have disadvantage on attack rolls with heavy weapons. Still, it's disadvantage, but I would not want to be making every attack with disadvantage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does ruin my dream of being, this tiny little goblin with a large weapon, right? And you've got a great sword, and you decide to use Fury of the Small, which gives you extra damage equal to your level. And then you're also using, but if you got that crossbow, sharpshooter, crossbow expert, goblin, dexterity-based Eldritch Knight, massive damage.
This is not in the D&D rules at all, but if I were a DM, and I am, if I were a DM who had a player who had a concept like that, they wanted to be a goblin, they wanted to have a huge weapon, I think some great treasure for them would be something like a mithril greatsword. A very light and elegant, heavy, huge weapon that would just breeze through the air. I think that could be very fun.
It's very fun. I played my main character as a Hexblade for the first time I started live streaming, and I gave him a great sword, but he had a strength of 8. He had been withered by a specter.
Amazing.
Which Hexblades can actually summon at 6th level, so I thought it was thematic. So he'd been withered by this, but he was carrying around a Final Fantasy sized great sword that was like too much for even a large creature to wield. But I like the idea of this like spindly Ichabod Crane, character who's just wizened, like just skinny and like clearly had been shrunken by some terrible curse, and just has this massive sword on their back.
Truly amazing.
You walk into the bar and everyone's like, you're either crazy or you're dangerous. I don't know which one you are, but let's just not find out.
Both, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a touch of both. So that's our overview of the Eldritch Knight. Again, if you want to play a Gish character, which everyone apparently does, this is the more fightery version of that. You do have other options. You got the Hexblade Warlock, which is a very good option. Currently, there is the Undead Warlock, which is a good option if you want to play a Gish of kind of a different vein. Paladins are kind of the ultimate Gish right now. I wouldn't say they're too powerful, but they're just too good, right? You get a little bit of everything with Paladin.
Yes. College of Swords Bard, I highly recommend as well.
College of Swords Bard, very, very strong. And, some clerics here and there, but really like Blade Singer. I love Blade Singers from 2nd edition. I have a fondness in my heart, but eventually I'm wondering why I'm not just, finger of deathing you. Right?
Yeah.
Unless I'm flavoring it that my sword is my finger of death. I just point my sword at you and you fall to death. You die. Then that's still fun.
Yeah, that's quite fun.
Then you're not losing the flavor. The flavor is on you.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's one of our many gishes in 5th edition D&D. I hope this was informative. Thank you so much, James Haeck, our lead writer over at D&D Beyond. He, again, is the author of many a D&D book and DM's Guild product, and, of course, our head writer here at D&D Beyond. So thank you so much for watching, and take care of each other. Thank you so much.
Thanks.